Welcome to this explainer. Imagine, just for a second, popping open the human brain and finding a tiny, incredibly distorted human just sitting right inside of it. Sounds totally bizarre, right? Like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. But as we're going to see today, this weird little human is actually one of the absolute most crucial concepts in all of neuroscience. It's the brain's secret body map.
Now, if you were to actually look at a picture of this little human, the proportions would look, well, absolutely horrifying. We are talking about massive, gigantic lips, huge hands with these long, stretching fingers, and then, in total contrast, a tiny little trunk and incredibly short, stubby legs. So you gotta ask yourself, why? Why on earth would the brain view us this way? Why wouldn't it just map us out exactly as we look in the mirror? Well, it turns out this distortion isn't a mistake at all. It is a sheer, brilliant feature of human biology. And uncovering the mystery of why our brain views us like this, it completely changes how we understand ourselves.
So let's officially meet this little human, the homunculus.
That word, homunculus, literally translates to little human. And in neuroscience, it refers to the somatopic representation of the body in the cerebral cortex. Okay, somatopic, I know it's a huge clunky word, but it really just means body mapping. It's specifically how different parts of your physical body are mapped to highly ordered, very specific regions of your brain. And you know what's really wild here? This map is actually upside down. Seriously, if you look at the physical brain, your toes are represented right near the top, right on the medial side, while your face and your tongue, they're mapped way down on the lateral side.
But it gets even cooler because there isn't just one map in there. There are two, the motor and sensory maps.
See, inside your head, there are two distinct strips of brain tissue, and they're separated by this little groove called the central sulcus. On one side, in the frontal lobe's precentral gyrus, we have the motor cortex. This is basically your command center. It controls voluntary movement, literally sending out the commands to your muscles so you can write, walk, talk, do whatever you need to do. Then, on the other side, located in the parietal lobe's post-central gyrus, we have the sensory cortex, and this strip does the exact opposite. It receives incoming data. It's constantly taking in sensations like touch, pain, temperature, vibration, and proprioception, which is your sense of where your body actually is in space. And the crazy thing? Each of these strips has its very own little human, its own homunculus, mapped all the way across it.
Which brings us to the golden rule of size when it comes to the brain: function over form. Let's think about those highly represented areas we mentioned earlier. The lips, the tongue, the face, the fingers, the hands. The brain simply doesn't care about the actual physical size of a body part. It cares about how much brain power that part needs. I mean, think about it. Your back is physically a massive area of your body, right? But it has pretty terrible fine sensation and really coarse movements. But your hands? Imagine reaching into your pocket right now and identifying a coin just by feeling it, without even looking. That incredible skill is called stereoagnosis, and pulling it off requires incredibly dense sensory receptors. The exact same thing goes for the motor cortex. Human evolution heavily favored tool use, precision grip, speech, facial expressions. Playing the piano, or, performing delicate surgery, requires enormous delicate motor control. Because these areas are just so highly sensitive and precise, they end up hogging huge chunks of brain real estate.
So the absolute crucial rule to remember here is simple. Functional importance determines cortical size. Basically, more function equals more cortex. The brain allocates its territory based on processing power and precision, not to physical tape measure size of the organ. Inside your brain, your lips and fingers are absolute giants, strictly because of what they do, not how big they are.
Now, let's look at what happens when the map breaks, and the clinical clues it leaves behind for doctors.
Because the brain maps the body so incredibly predictably, doctors can actually localize exactly where a stroke has occurred just by looking at a patient's symptoms. It's almost like a giant puzzle. For instance, the middle cerebral artery, or MCA, supplies blood to the lateral areas of the cortex. Those are the exact spots where the face and the upper limbs are mapped. So a stroke in the MCA predictably causes facial and arm weakness. But wait, remember how the legs are mapped upside down, right at the top medial part of the brain? Well, that specific area is supplied by the anterior cerebral artery, or the ACA. So if a patient comes into the ER with specifically leg weakness, doctors immediately know to look at the ACA. The map literally gives them the exact coordinates of the problem.
And we can actually watch this map in real-time action during something called a Jacksonian seizure. A focal seizure might start with just a simple tiny twitch in the finger, but then it physically marches up the body. The twitching spreads to the hand, then up to the arm, and then right into the face. Why does it do that? Because the abnormal electricity in the brain is literally sweeping across adjacent regions of the homunculus map. As the electricity moves just an inch across the cortex, the physical spasm moves right up the corresponding body parts. It is wild to witness.
You know, it's amazing to think about how we even figured all of this out in the first place. We actually owe this whole discovery to a pioneering neurosurgeon named Wilder Penfield. Way back when, during surgeries for epilepsy, Penfield would electrically stimulate the exposed brains of awake patients. He'd apply a tiny, totally safe electrical current and just ask the patient, "Hey, what do you feel right now?" A patient might suddenly say their thumb was tingling, or their jaw would involuntarily twitch. By doing this incredibly systematically, over and over again, Penfield was able to literally draw out the entire map of the homunculus.
Which leads us to one of the most fascinating phenomenons in all of medicine, the phantom limb mystery. You've probably heard of phantom limb syndrome, right? It's where amputees continue to feel tingling, pain, or even full movement in a limb that is literally no longer there. For a really long time, this was just a total medical mystery, but the mechanics behind it are honestly astonishing. Let's say a hand is amputated. The physical hand is gone, yes, but the cortical hand area inside the brain, that precious real estate on the homunculus map, is still very much alive, and it is hungry for input. So what happens next? Well, the adjacent areas on the map, like that massive face region we talked about, start to spread out. They literally invade that newly unused hand territory. When the face area activates those neurons, the brain misinterprets the signal, and the patient physically feels sensations in a hand that doesn't exist anymore. It is a stunning example of just how persistent our internal mapping really is.
Now, this phantom limb phenomenon is a dramatic extreme example of a much broader, super important concept known as neuroplasticity. See, the homunculus is not fixed forever in stone. Your brain has this incredible ability to reorganize its cortical maps based entirely on your use and your experience. If you are a violin player, years of constant practice will physically enlarge the finger representation on your motor and sensory maps, simply because you are constantly strengthening those cortical connections. Blind individuals who read Braille often have a hugely enhanced touch representation in their sensory cortex. Your brain literally rewires itself based on how you use your body day in and day out.
So ultimately, the big takeaway here is that your brain is not organized by body size. It is organized by importance. Inside that skull of yours, your lips, your tongue, and your fingers are absolute giants because they are so fundamentally vital to human evolution, to using tools, and to how we communicate and connect with each other.
And I want to leave you with this final kind of provocative thought today. We just learned that the brain literally allocates real estate to the things you do the most, constantly reshaping its maps through neuroplasticity. So take a look at your own life for a second. If your brain remaps itself based on use, how is your daily routine rewiring your homunculus right now? What parts of your brain's secret map are you making larger today? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring the incredible map inside your head.